Greetings everyone, JRandall0308 here. I'm showing you Marvel Strike Force because I wanted to make a point about the amount of content in Lord of the Rings Heroes of Middle-earth, or I should say the lack of content in LOTR-HOME. For those of you not familiar with Marvel Strike Force, it is a gacha game, hero collector, obviously based on the Marvel Universe. It's developed by a different company than CG, the developer of LOTR-HOME, so there are some things that are different, but there are a lot of things that are the same. It's essentially 5 versus 5 squad battles. Sometimes there are more than 5 enemies. There are player versus environment or PvE modes, and there are player versus player or PvP modes. You can see on the main screen of Marvel Strike Force there is a lot of stuff. So this would be roughly the equivalent of the sort of tavern scene in LOTR-HOME, except with way more stuff to do. So I'm going to kind of go through this. Arena, everybody knows Arena. You fight against people, try to raise your rank. That's a PvP mode that's common to the two games. Challenges, these are similar to the challenges in LOTR-HOME. Events. So there are different character releases, there are different milestones you can get for doing different things. Now we have character releases in LOTR-HOME, but we don't have quite as many different kinds. You can see some that are completed here, that recently completed. Now in fairness, Marvel Strike Force is a much older game, so it's had years and years to build this up, but this is what we need to see in LOTR-HOME. We need to start seeing these different ways of acquiring characters other than the same marquee events over and over and over. I want to come back to one event in particular when I get there. Milestones, a little bit similar to quests, except the interesting thing here is you can see at the top how these first 3 say solo, 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 but then we come to some that are alliance-wide milestones. So you're adding up the scores of different people in your alliance. So that gives you at least a little bit of encouragement to do something for the good of the alliance or guild in LOTR-HOME parlance. Campaign, there's a ton of different campaigns in Marvel Strike Force. This would be roughly equivalent to the Light, Shadow, and Guild campaigns. I don't really consider this content. Once you beat a campaign node, you can just auto-win it. It doesn't really matter which campaign node it is. So that's just something you grind out every day to farm character shards, gear, gold, whatever. Blitz, my absolute least favorite mode in Marvel Strike Force. It's still 5v5. It kind of looks like you're fighting against other opponents, but you're really not. So, this is JRandall0308, that's me on the left, Tickus on the right. Tickus owns those characters, but everything about them is scaled up to my difficulty. So the amount of gear they have, their star level, their red star level, which is sitting on top of regular star level, that's something to look forward to in LOTR-HOME. And hey, in Marvel Strike Force, we now have diamonds that sit on top of red stars. So 3 different ways to make your character more and more powerful. But this is a pretty dumb mode. All parts of it can be simulated. You can fight it manually if you want to. I don't know, they did some sort of update and now the simulation takes forever. It's usually much snappier than that. But you just build up points and you get, some rewards you can use in different parts of the game. I don't consider that content either, although I suppose technically it is. Now here's a very interesting mode that we only get in Marvel Strike Force once in a while. It lives under Blitz, but it's really called Tower Mode. So you start at the bottom of the tower with some relatively easy enemies, and you climb your way up as high as you can, beating increasingly more and more difficult teams. You try to get all the way to the top of the tower, which I was not able to do this time because there's a certain character I don't have who makes some of these top floors really much easier. Also, you can only use each team once per cooldown cycle, so once per day. So it's not like you can just spam your best team over and over. So you can see that my team over here is on cooldown because I just used it today on floor 35. I am probably done and won't be able to climb any higher. This ends in a few hours from when I'm recording this video. But this is an interesting kind of compare yourself to the Joneses mode. Who can climb the tower the highest? A lot of people are going to reach the highest floor, and then it's about who got there first, how many times did they deliberately drop down and climb again. And you can see some of these scores are just absolutely ridiculous. Boy, there's me with a robust 8,810th place. Suppose it's better than nothing. And then you get some really good rewards. These are different orbs that contain, really desirable gear and some of the diamonds that we were talking about earlier. That's sort of a boost to your character's star level. So tower mode, it's PvE. It is content. It only comes around once in a while. And although you can sim it like a blitz, you really don't want to, because you'll end up losing a lot of battles you should have won. Another interesting piece of Marvel Strike Force that I'd love to see in LOTR-HOME. So you have the ability to donate to your alliance. I already did for the day, but you're essentially donating gold. It's not very much gold. You can also donate energy cores, which are like the equivalent of gems in LOTR-HOME, and then you reach these different boxes and they get you some alliance credits that you can use to purchase things in a specific alliance store. So is that content? I don't know. It's kind of routine. You just do it every day, but at least it gives you another way to participate in your alliance. Early in a Marvel Strike Force alliance, you will be building up for something called Stark Tech. You'll be using those alliance credits to purchase that. So these are all maxed out. Like any competent alliance or guild is going to max these out as soon as they can. And then there's, nothing else to do with Stark Tech, but you can still use the alliance credits in a particular store in the game, to buy different things. Speaking of which, I really do prefer the way Marvel Strike Force organizes all the different stores in tabs. And the loading is a lot snappier. And also, if I buy something here, I'll just buy something dumb that I don't even really need. You can see it's not going to scroll me back to the top. This is super easy. It's super easy in web development. Come on, CG, fix this in LOTR-HOME. That's not hard. Alliance War. Those of you who have played Star Wars, whatever it's called. Boy, I'm blanking on the name right now. There's different kinds of war. The Marvel Strike Force War is one alliance versus another alliance. There's different, rooms that you defend on your carrier here. We could imagine there could be different rooms in LOTR-HOME in a castle, or the Dwarven Mines of Moria, or the different regions of Lothlorien. There's a lot of different possibilities for what the rooms could be. I'm making air quotes. And then you can set your defenses different way. Teams that you're using on defense cannot be used to attack, and vice versa. Each of the rooms has something that it does, so they may be more or less worth defending powerfully depending on what they do. During an attacking war, you will be attacking the enemy's arrangement of rooms, and you don't know exactly what it will be, although part of the strategy is how do you arrange the rooms, how do you surround them with the right ones that boost each other. When you're attacking, you'll try to, what we call, drill down to find the really good global buff rooms and take those out first. And then it's essentially a race to see, which team can score the most points, which team can win the war. So in our last war, we lost. You can see it's a very close score, which is pretty typical for these end game alliances like the one that I'm in. But, that's a guild versus guild in LOTR-HOME terms, PvP mode. That would be cool. Raids. So raids in Marvel Strike Force, although somewhat conceptually similar to the raid that we have in LOTR-HOME, are in a lot of ways better. And you can see there's a bunch of different raids. Pretty much for endgame alliances, you're only going to do the most difficult raid. There's no reason to do an easier one. We could imagine in LOTR-HOME terms, once everybody in your guild is able to do difficulty 5, you're not going to deliberately do difficulty 4, right? There's no reason to to do an easier difficulty, you do whatever difficulty gets you the most points and the best rewards. So that part's the same. But the part that's not the same is that in this raid with my Marvel Strike Force Alliance, I'm actually on what we call a strike team with these two other players, Spider Beeb and Gokil. And we have been proceeding on these raid nodes that you can think of as similar to the different chapters of the Mines of Moria raid, except all of us can contribute to them. So Gokil did those two nodes, Spider Beeb came from the other side and did that one. You can see, Gokil started this node and wasn't able to defeat it, and I was able to come along and beat it. But then, we needed to, wait for a more powerful players roster to keep going. You can see places where I started a node and did, maybe 40% of the damage, then Gokil came in and finished it. And so you're trying to get as far as you can in the raid for different rewards. We don't always push it to 100% because that requires a pretty heavy investment of time and resources, but this is a daily activity in Marvel Strike Force. You do a raid every day as opposed to a weekly activity in LOTR-HOME. And there's meaningful ways to coordinate with your guild, right? It's not 36 games of solitaire like the LOTR-HOME raid, and you just add everybody's scores together. I mean, yes, only one player in Marvel Strike Force is attacking the node at a time. Of course, each player is on his or her own device, so it's solitaire in that sense, but you are both contributing to all of you are contributing to the success of the raid. And then there can be different strategies about how do you pair people up, where do you put 3 players, where do you put 2, what different strike teams do you create to try and maximize your success in the raid. The word raid in LOTR-HOME, now means something different, but I'd love to see some type of mode in LOTR-HOME where there is meaningful guild coordination. All right, just to finish this out, Real-Time Arena, this is kind of an abandoned piece of content in Marvel Strike Force. Abandoned in the sense that they don't really actively support it anymore, but it is pretty cool. You can choose a team, and when you ready up and you fight, you are actually fighting in real time against another opponent. So you have a certain number of seconds to take your turn, and then your opponent has a certain number of seconds to take his turn. So it's kind of like Blitz or Arena, except there's no AI control of any team. So this is actually me making the decisions for myself and my opponent kicking my ass because he's using an updated team and I'm not, right? But you can see that is Real-Time Arena. Some people really enjoy that PvP aspect of the game, and it is fairly cool. It's a lot quicker than the 5-minute long non-real-time arena match. Ironically, the real-time version is faster than the non-real-time version. Cosmic Crucible, another PvP mode. I like to refer to this as mini war. You're fighting against, one other opponent. You are setting your defense across 6 rooms. Your opponent is setting a defense. You attack their defenders. They attack your defenders. Whoever scores more points advances. The other one goes, onto the loser track. And then you see at the end, who ended up undefeated, who had 2 wins, who had 1 win, and who had 0 wins. And then you get different rewards depending on how you did in Cosmic Crucible. I don't particularly enjoy it, but it is content. It happens 3 times a week. It gives you something to do. It's another PvP asynchronous mode that some people really enjoy. There's a lot of theory crafting that can go into what do you put on defense, what do you put on offense. I didn't actually delve into this, but each of the rooms will have some sort of crazy thing that they're doing. There's different seasons. So this one is all about spider hunters because they've just released Kraven the Hunter. So there's all sorts of things related to Spider-Verse characters. And saving perhaps the best for last, my favorite content in Marvel Strike Force that I'd really like to see something like this in LOTR-HOME. So first of all, we had this kind of year-long campaign to unlock Apocalypse, who's a very powerful character, like the equivalent of Gandalf, or I suppose the Witch King would be a better comparison, since Apocalypse is a bad guy. But you had to have the appropriate team, you had to have it powerful enough, you had to fight your way up, you had to complete all the chapters for the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and then you were able to go unlock Apocalypse himself. That was a pretty cool, lengthy piece of content that you engaged with throughout the year. And then another piece of occasional content, you can really only do each of these twice to get meaningful rewards. You can keep doing them, for bragging rights, like, holy cow, this guy did Dark Dimension 1 in, under 4 minutes. But it is a little bit like a solo raid. I'll show you the one that I'm actively working on, Dark Dimension 6, which is going to unlock Super Skrull for me. So you can see it's similar to the raid, where there's a series of nodes. They each had a certain criteria that you had to meet, and so you can't just use any team you want. You had to use a team that met that criteria. And every time you attack it, the game remembers how much damage the enemy took, and then you come in the next day, you do some more damage, until you beat it. So it would kind of be like fighting a raid chapter in LOTR-HOME, except that when your team was defeated, it would remember the damage and add on to it. And also there wouldn't be endless waves. So you do eventually beat all of the enemies on a node. So you can see this node that I, need to attack has a finite number of enemies. Dark Dimension, very tough, typically takes weeks or a couple months to fully grind through it, at least until there's a lot of power creep, and then people are able to do it in 44 minutes, for a previous version of it. And that's how you get certain very powerful characters or certain very powerful rewards. It would be a neat piece of content for LOTR-HOME to give us to sort of prove our mettle, and it's something you work on a little bit every day, and so you get a little bit of deferred gratification out of it. So that is all the content in Marvel Strike Force. You can see there's a lot of it. There's a mixture of player versus player and player versus environment, and there are different ways that they've essentially found to assemble this 5 versus 5 squad fighting game and do some interesting stuff with it. So CG, we're throwing down the gauntlet. This is the level of content that I want to see in Marvel Strike Force as the game progresses. Thank you for watching. JRandall0308 with the second part of my video. First of all, at the end of the previous part, I said the gauntlet was thrown down to make MSF, or Marvel Strike Force, have more content. Obviously, I misspoke. I meant the gauntlet is thrown down to make LOTR-HOME have more content. So here I am signed in to my account. What can I do today other than, grind out character shards and check the stores? Well, I can fight in the arena, and I do need to do that because I'd like to get out of LOL Gold and into some of the higher arena tiers. It's not a raid day, so I can't do any raids. We will launch our raid tomorrow. And cricket sound, that's it. That's the content that exists right now in LOTR-HOME. That's why the gauntlet is being thrown down. There just isn't enough to do in this game. All right, once again, thanks for watching.